3 lessons to be learnt from the past. Let's just jump into it straight away. Number 1, sentiment for a Pokemon card set can change over time. Now, this is a really important one because what might be hot now, look, it's probably always going to be quite hot if it's hot now, but printing can absolutely run it into the ground, and I'll touch more on that in a second. Or sometimes what might not be hot now can become more hot into the future based on print runs and a few other things. And look, if we talk about this on a more broader scale or a deeper scale, there's a few examples of recent history where sets that weren't seen as super popular, super hot, super good investments when they first come out became really good investments down the track. So that's what I mean by the tip number 1 that we can learn from history, which is sentiment for a set and the chase cards can change over time. And that's predominantly what happens because sentiment for a set, it's not just about the sealed product, it's about what comes inside it, because essentially that's what adds value to the sealed product. Like, people are only buying the sealed product predominantly. Look, it can become collectible in its own right, of course, but what makes it more hot is the chase cards that you can get from it, because that broadens your buying market. You're not just selling to sealed collectors, you're also selling to rip and shippers and people want to open it and people that want to, grade the cards inside it, etc. So sentiment for a set can change. And one of the most recent ones, or the best example recently, is probably something like Fusion Strike. Look, when Fusion Strike first came out, of course it had nice chase cards inside it, but not many really. Like, it was seen as I wouldn't say a 2-hit wonder, but it sort of was in one regards. Like, the Gengar was an absolute banger. Everyone loved that card when it first came out. And of course the Espeon was also a really, really strong chase card inside there. Look, people didn't mind the Mew alternate art. The Mew VMAX just looked like a regular VMAX, so it didn't get all that much love. Everyone's always liked, in my opinion, the Celebi artwork, but it was sort of seen as that set that was, you either got the Gengar or that was it. And look, it's evolved into much more of that. It's evolved into a great sealed collectible in its own right because it's pink and it's got Mew on the front of the booster box. It's a Psychic Ghost-based set, which always seemed to perform really well. The Gengar in the last 2 or so years has really shot up in price. The Espeon has really shot up in price. The Mew and Mew VMAX has shot up in price. The PSA 10 grading conversion to those cards has all shot up in price. Even things like that Celebi has grown in price. So what it's become is this top 5 chase card, quite strong Pokemon card set with also really, really strong PSA 10 prices to go along with it. And as a result, all of those things has given a change to community sentiment, because when this set first came out, it wasn't all that important, as in, well, it's not that it wasn't important, it wasn't all that expensive. We all know, if you've been around the hobby for the time, that it sat around that $90 to $100 for a long period of time. And it took like 2 or so years to start gaining some traction, and all of a sudden, bang, it's really taken off in price. Why? Because sentiment towards that set has well and truly changed. Another example, rewinding back from Sword and Shield to Sun and Moon era, is probably something like Team Up. When Team Up first came out, which was the first tag team set that we had, okay, of course, then it followed with Unbroken Bonds and Unified Minds, and of course the beautiful Cosmic Eclipse to finalize the 4 tag team sets. The sentiment towards it was not terrible, but it also wasn't fantastic. People weren't just like, oh wow, this new mechanic's blown us away and the cards are amazing. Cards like Latios and Latios sat at a really, really gentle price for a long period of time. It wasn't until we realized that A, the set was short printed, and B, there wasn't going to be another print run at all, that it became this really, really rare gem of a set sitting inside the tag team block and the whole Sun and Moon block. And eventually, of course, sentiment towards those tag team cards, particularly those alternate art tag team cards, really, really grew, where people see them as beautiful Pokemon cards, beautiful chase cards, and also as a PSA 10, they can be incredibly, incredibly expensive. So sentiment towards those sets changed. Now, I just want to premise this first tip on one other thing, that you also can't polish a turd though. Just because if something is absolutely terrible now, it's probably going to be absolutely terrible in the future. If we look at a set like Steam Siege, for argument's sake, look, that was never a fantastic Pokemon card set. Look, it's grown in value, don't get me wrong, it well and truly has. But it hasn't grown in value because it's a good set or good chase cards. It's just become a collectible sealed product in its own right. And as you'll see, that's lagging behind every other XY booster box in there. So that will happen. Like, they'll still go up in price, but don't think that a card with the top hit being $20 and the next top hit being $5, they'll eventually be, $1,000 cards. It's probably just not going to happen. So yeah, that's what I'll premise that one. Before we jump into number 2, quick shout out to today's video sponsor, which is of course the Collector app. Awesome, awesome app. There'll be a link in the description to download it. You can put your whole sealed and singles collection in there. Down in the content creators section, you'll see me. If you want to follow my journey and what I'm purchasing and what my collection's like, nothing to hide in there. It's only my sealed products. I don't have any of my singles in there, but just sealed products in there. The other side is if you want to become a pro member, that is super, super easy. There's awesome giveaways. And also now there is set analytics inside there, which is really, really important as an investor because you can see the total set value. You can see what cards are hot, what the top 5 hits are from a set. The analytics on this app are absolutely amazing, will really help you in your journey. So again, link in the description to download that. Number 2, and this is an important one, and I certainly don't want to sound like I'm harping on about this, but one thing we can learn from history, and this almost follows up from that statement I made at the end, a bad set is never going to be the most expensive sealed product, but the best set will probably always going to be the most expensive sealed product. So that's tip number 2, the highest total set value of a set / the set with the best chase cards or the most expensive chase cards is always going to have the strongest sealed price. If we look across history and we go back to first edition base set, then we fast forward to E-Series and we look at a set like Skyridge. Then we fast forward to sets like the EX era where we have sets like EX Deoxys where we can chase Gold Star Rayquazas, etc. EX Holland Phantoms where we can get Gold Star Mewtwo and Gyarados, etc. Where those booster boxes with really, really expensive, strong chase cards, they prove to be the best sets and most expensive sets. And we fast forward to modern times, sets like Team Up from Sun and Moon, it has the most expensive chase cards. We fast forward even to Sword and Shield, and we look at a set like Evolving Skies. What does it tell us? It has the highest total set value, and it has the strongest chase cards, and as a result, we get the strongest sealed price for the product inside there. That is a really, really important tip we can learn from history. Now, how do we transfer that tip onto something modern? And look, we look at Scarlet and Violet, and prices are quite overinflated at the moment, and it's hard to know what to buy or what to spend your money on. But then you look at a set like, and this keeps growing on me. In fact, I'm going to do my next video on it because I think this set is growing on me as an investment more than I thought it would, and that is, of course, Destined Rivals. We look at a set like Destined Rivals, and what do you know? It has the most expensive chase cards from the booster box era. And look, they'll probably dip in price as more supply comes out. We don't know what the print runs are going to be like. We look at sets like Prismatic Evolutions and 151, which have really strong chase cards, particularly Prismatic Evolutions. And we look at the total set value and the depth inside those sets, and they just become no-brainers in terms of an investment. So if you're looking for a modern investment based on that previous advice, some lessons that we can learn from the past, sets with high set values and strong chase cards now are going to be fantastic sets to invest in. Why? It broadens your buying pool. Okay, sets with no chase cards will get sold. Sets like Rebel Clash, sets like Steam Siege that I mentioned before, they will get sold as booster boxes. People will buy them, but you're limiting your buyer base. So really the only people that are going to buy them is people that are just sealed booster box collectors. And that's fine, but you're limiting the rest of your market. So not only will it take you longer to sell those products in the future, they aren't going to appreciate as much because there's not as much demand from them. The demand is coming from one segment, which is a sealed booster box collector. The demand isn't coming from other segments of the market that'll buy that product. Rip and shippers, YouTubers that will do openings for views, etc. There's so many other options that could come through from there. Even the investor bros where they'll just buy it to invest to flip because they know it's a good set. That limits you in that segment. So highest total set value / best chase cards will give us best returns. That's something we can take from history. Now, the third point I wanted to make, third and final, is one thing to keep in mind, and this isn't a downer point in any way, shape or form, but keep in mind the acceleration that we've seen in the Pokemon card space, in the alternate investment space, this massive amount of money that's being pumped in the hobby is really, really recent. That massive accelerated growth we've seen across base set, E-Series, EX era, all the way through modern stuff has accelerated since 2020. If people were in the hobby around 2018 or 2019, base set booster boxes were still at a somewhat reasonable price. The acceleration happened like that. It was so quick. And this whole investment side has also accelerated so quickly. I don't know if you hang around Reddit at all, but on Reddit, the Poke Investing Forum back in 2020, it had like 1,000 members. That's pretty much when it started. And now it's got close to 250,000 members. That shows you how quickly this idea of Pokemon investing has accelerated in the last 5 years. It's been phenomenal how quickly it's accelerated. Now, this isn't a warning in any way, shape or form. Perhaps it's maybe just a gentle reminder that community sentiment or just the overall public sentiment towards an investment can swing really quickly. And from my point of view, I don't have I'm perhaps maybe a little bit gun shy to put the mortgage on it. I'm the first to promote Pokemon investing as a super fun investment. It's so fun. Like, how cool is it to have a display like this? How cool is it to have booster boxes that you can buy and watch them appreciate in value and load them up into app? It's so much more fun than just, clicking a button to do a trade on a share and seeing if it goes up or down and selling it in 3 years and making 30%. Typically, particularly over the last 5 years, these have massively outperformed a lot of other investments, like standard investments. So I'm not sitting here saying, oh, it's all going to go to zero. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying it's a gentle reminder how rapidly the Pokemon investing space has accelerated. And just to be a little bit careful, like putting all your eggs in one basket is never a good idea on the investing space. If you've got property, if you've got shares, if you've got other things, if you've got your 401k in America or your superannuation fund here in Australia, you're doing all those right things and you've got some spare income to have some fun with, whether it's 5% or 10%, go for it, because at the moment it is giving you phenomenal returns, the Pokemon card market. But just a gentle reminder that it's accelerated so rapidly and we don't know what the future holds. If anyone says it's going to accelerate even more, crystal ball stuff. Look, it could well do that. In fact, I'm one of the biggest advocates for Pokemon card investing. I think it's so fun, and I think so many people are so sick of having boring investments. This new generation is coming through. Not only is it a fun investment, but it's attached to nostalgia and something tangible for people, and that has massive weight. My opinion is, personally, I think it's going to keep growing. Again, that's crystal ball stuff. That's just my thoughts. That's just my thoughts around what could happen. But I do think it'll keep growing, and I think it's a fantastic investment. But just a gentle reminder that it's accelerated so rapidly in the last 5 years. I'm Michael. This is PokeOz. That's 3 lessons we could have learned from the past. I'll catch everyone next time.